Welcome, everyone. Episode 20 of the Street Scene Power Hour. We're getting up to that number 100 episode, which our counterparts in Butler just hit their 100 episode.
Oh man, we got to pass them up.
Yeah, so we're well on our way up there. But got host Rick Guerrera. I'm Greg Roten, and we have host Larry Ward. And we are welcome to have our guest, Dave Mangun. And Larry, take it away. And Dave is Larry's friend. He's been on tours. Larry met Dave here, I don't know how long ago, Larry, but Larry, take it away. And you got quite a bit to talk about with Dave and his tours on motorcycle tours.
Well, I happened to go on one of the BMW mini kind of tours, and this one involved some off-road riding. Well, I didn't have an off-road bike that was running then, so I just put together my BMW R1100 RT, and it really needed to take it out in that. So I took a couple 100-mile trip over to West Virginia, and it was just really pretty much riding by myself. And then on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, I got out from breakfast or the store, and I walked out into the parking lot. There was a guy in, I think, a pickup truck. I may be getting all this wrong, Dave, because it was months ago. And he was just staring at my bike. And I thought, well, maybe I'll sell it to him or something. I'll figure out how to get it home.
Easy money.
It turns out he's another.
I was stalking him.
Another BMW owner, and Dave Mangun, and he got out and introduced himself, and we started talking a little bit. And then the next day he invited me and our vice president of the Motorcycle Sport Touring Association, Norm Kern, for breakfast. And then later that day, Dave rode pretty much all the way through West Virginia over as I headed back home, probably 120 miles before he decided to turn and head back. But his whole plan was that he was going to be starting a very, very long tour. So, Dave, I want to welcome you to Armstrong Street Scene Power Hour. And I'd like you to give our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you began in motorcycling.
Hey, a little bit of background about myself. First of all, as many of us have, I rode motorcycles at an early age, back in my teenage years, and actually survived that. And,
we all. I did too.
So, fast forward into adulthood and childhood, rearing, work gets in the way, et cetera, et cetera. So I pretty much parked the bike until we became empty nesters, my wife and I. And I decided it was time for me to get back on two wheels again. And so that was about 2003. So by that time, I'm already in my 50s, but it's never too late to start, as I like to say. And so I tried to play catch up since then. And my third bike, actually, well, let me back up a step. I retired on April 1st of 2017. Went out and bought a new motorcycle on April 14th of 2017 as a retirement gift myself, and then headed out on May 8th on a 10,000 mile plus cross country trip.
Wow!
And with my wife in tow with an SUV. So that was a bucket list tour. Wanted to ride coast to coast. I wanted to have visited all 50 states. Check. You get the idea. So. About that time, my son and I started riding annually. So we just last month completed our 10th annual father-son motorcycle ride, and in southeastern Ohio, of all places. And I must say that southeastern Ohio roads are a well-kept secret. There's certainly some fun roads there, and I know some of them at least. But anyway, this past June, I was planning on going to the BMW Motorcycle Owners Association International Rally in Great Falls, Montana. And actually had plans to go out there in 2020, but I think you all know what happened to that. So basically, I did a reset and went out this year. And so I take the roads less traveled by when I go. I try to stay off what I call a super slab as much as I possibly can. And so my first night away from here was at Canaan Valley, West Virginia, where I met Larry and some of his friends, Norm Kern, Rob Dickman, and we rode to dinner and back. And so that was day one, and from there on, 22 more days, 6,000 miles, lots of smiles. I returned home. Again, another bucket list tour. I wanted to ride through the Rockies, and also I wanted to ride the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park. And so anyway, so that was again kind of another bucket list trip. And so I ride solo most of the time. A lot of people ride and like to ride in groups, and there's something to be said for that, particularly if you have a breakdown or mishap. But I tend to be a maverick, and I like to say I travel with all my best friends. So
I'm going to interrupt just a second. Gary Campesi, are you with us right now? I didn't know if you were here.
I see his phone up
I
there.
see his phone up there, but Gary. Okay. Anyway.
Well, Dave, what I would like to ask you about a couple of things. First of all, something like this takes a fair amount of planning. We like to think that not all wanderers are lost, or those that wander are lost. There's an art to looking like you're lost, but actually trying to figure out where you're at and how to go. So let's start off with talking about the type of motorcycle you have, how you outfitted it so that you could make this type of a trip, and the planning elements that go into place to be able to safely get to where you're going in a reasonable amount of time.
I ride a 2016 BMW R1200 GS water cooled. It's considered dual sport, large enduro, and it's called a lot of different names, but basically it's an adventure. I consider it an adventure tour because it's well equipped to do adventure riding, but also it's very capable of doing touring on for long distances as well. I have the two side cases and top case, tank bag, and in this particular trip I carried a duffel bag on the pillion behind me, and with that I carried everything I needed, modicum of tools, supplies, clothing. I had clothing for all 3 seasons because I felt when I get up to some of these passes in the Rockies that I might even hit some freezing weather. That didn't materialize, but I was prepared for it if it did. As far as planning is concerned, I don't know what everybody else does. I have kind of a rather unique method that I use, if you call it that. First, I come up with a conceptual plan. Okay, so I want to go to, in this case, Great Falls, Montana. So the second thing I do is, okay, who do I know that lives between here and there? And so I kind of connect the dots, if you will. And so I like to stay overnight and visit friends and family or whatever along the way. And then the second thing I do after I've connected those dots is to actually do the routing. Now, this particular time, back up. I use Basecamp, Garmin Basecamp, to program
That's a standard.
that's what I download into my GPS on my bike.
What is that, Dave?
Okay, so most of you, I believe, are familiar with Garmin GPSs.
Yeah.
And Basecamp is just a program where you can actually pick your routes, custom build your routes. For instance, if I want to go from here to Virginia Beach, but I don't want to go on Interstate 64.
Mhm.
Okay, so I want to go on Route 250. So if I just put in Virginia Beach as a destination, it'll take me I-64. It will. So what I have to do is I have to physically tell it that I want to take Route 250.
Okay.
And that's
Mhm.
that's it in a nutshell. But it's that times many times over when you're traveling across country. And the next thing I do when I'm doing my route planning is I look at the map and look at the topography, and I like to think that I have an innate ability to find cool roads that are less traveled by, that are going to be fun to ride on a motorcycle. And so far I've been either been good or dumb lucky, or maybe a little bit of both. I don't know, but I have really found some fun roads in my riding career. And then the other thing I do is I try to avoid overdoing it, because I'll never be an iron butt rider where you ride 1,000 miles in a day. Not going to happen. I'm not that person. I like to be able to stop, and I like to see where I've been. I like to be able to pull off, and if I see something interesting, and I don't want to burn myself out. I'm 71 years old. In a few weeks, I'll be completing my 72nd trip around the sun, and I don't have the stamina I had when I was 22. So,
Yeah.
so
I hear you.
so I tried to keep my daily travels down to a manageable level. Ideally, no more than about 8 hours or so in the saddle.
Yeah.
If I can jump in there just 1 second.
Sure.
I am a member of the Iron Butt Association. So I've done 1,400 miles in like 18 hours, that kind of thing. But as I've gotten older, I used to love to ride at night. Now I don't like riding at night. And one of the limitations about being able to travel long distances, to draw a parallel to fishing, the longer your line is in the water, the better your chance of getting a bite. Well, the longer you can stay on a bike with the optional auxiliary gas tanks and be able to navigate safely, the further you're going to be able to travel in a given amount of time. But what I find the limitation for me, and you could expand on this, Dave, is that when I start to get past dusk and it actually is dark, it's not bad if I'm completely by myself. I can put my auxiliary lights on, I can light up the road. Where I have problems on traveling great distances like I used to is that if I have to travel a lot at night and I have to what we call slab it, which is busting on the turnpike or the freeways or anything that's a 70+ mile an hour road to get somewhere, and you might have to do it for 5 or 6 hours to complete the trip, there's invariably a lot of traffic. And then at my age, I'm 70, I get a lot of starburst kind of stuff. It makes riding uncomfortable, not necessarily as safe as I'd like it to be. But Dave, any of those limitations are imparted upon you, or is your eyesight okay for traveling at night?
I don't have too much problem as far as the starburst issue with the lights, etc. My biggest concern with traveling at night are the hoof creatures that are out there.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they're out there in the daytime, but not as prolific, and you have a better chance. You have a wider field of vision, no matter how well your lights light up the world. You still have a better chance of seeing them in the daytime. So
Right.
I just have a concern mainly about the hoof creatures. Plus, I feel like after I've ridden for 8 to 10 hours, say, I feel like I start losing my edge. And when I ride, I don't listen to music. I don't talk on the phone. I am zeroed in on the road ahead of me and
Me
behind
too.
me and beside me, etc.
Right.
My head's on a swivel. And I feel like when I ride my motorcycle, I tire more quickly than when I'm in a car. Because in a car, it's like sitting in this chair and you're holding onto the wheel. When I'm on the bike, if I start feeling like I'm just a passenger, it's time for me to stop.
Well,
Because
Dave,
I feel like I am in control, and in order to stay in control and anticipate any hazards that may be coming my way, I have to be on top of my game. And,
well,
and,
one
I,
of the
and I
things,
lose that after so many hours on the road.
well, some of the mitigating factors on being able to do great distances on a motorcycle is how the bike is set up for the individual. I can tell you that I'd rather do 1,000 miles on a motorcycle any day than 1,000 miles in a car. That's just me. And I've demonstrated it to myself. I get more fatigued in a car, and I get I get second wind on the motorcycle, but one of the things that has helped me uh, is most of the people in the Motorcycle Sport Touring Association uh, use Senna, which is a communications device that clips to the side of your helmet. And I avoided that like the plague. I'm like you, Dave. I don't listen to anything except the engine and the road. And but what I found was really nice is that while I can pair my GPS and I pair my phone to my headset. So I never need to take my eyes off the road to hear where the next turn is, or is there a traffic avoidance I need to know. It comes through the helmet. It's funny because I've taken calls from my wife who couldn't believe I was on the bike, listening. I have a good helmet and a rye helmet, and keeps things pretty quiet. But being able to navigate and not have to take your eyes off the road, that's a pretty cool thing. And being able to communicate. I don't make calls necessarily, but sometimes, especially when I was working at iHeart, I'd have to take them just because it was the nature of the job or the business. But as far as, and another topic, and we'll have maybe another show about the little things that make the difference on going long distance on a motorcycle, and what to do and what not to do. There's actually a tutorial on the Iron Butt Association wisdom, and they tell you what to do and what not to do, and crazy things like, hey, don't change your helmet right before you do 1,000-mile ride.
Yeah.
Or make sure the seat, the mirrors, the bars, the pegs are all as adjusted as they can be to you to make your comfort level higher. So stuff like that. Now, Dave, as you started out in your trip, when you think about the trip, were there some things that you thought, hey, due to my planning, this whole thing went so good, but then every once in a while, FUBAR came up and something didn't go right? And I'd rather hear about what didn't go right and what you did to get yourself out of it. I know I broke down. I'm telling you what, I am so sick of riding in the rain, and I'm especially sick of breaking down in the rain. But I've gotten pretty good at resourcing what I need to do to get out of it. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your trials and tribulations as you went along this 20-some day trip.
Okay. Well, on this particular trip, the biggest aggravation I had was well, first of all, I mentioned the Garmin base camp. It is not the most user friendly program to do a custom routing.
Right.
I mean, it's great when you get it down, but to actually the mechanics of getting it into the program is much easier to do it, for instance, with Google Maps. So I was told, okay, well, you can do it Google Maps, and then there's a method of converting it into the Garmin language, so to speak. And so I did that, only to find out that about every, I don't know, I'd say few miles, some case it was just a few miles, it plucked a waypoint, which I hadn't chosen. So as I'm riding, it keeps telling me that my next intermediate destination is just maybe minutes away. So that was very annoying. And it didn't allow me to plan, for instance, how long am I going to be till I reach my final destination for the day? Now, I did find out a way eventually to trick that, but that was very annoying. And it also took me on made some little twists and turns that I hadn't really programmed in there. So I would do that differently if I were to plan this trip again. I would just take the long way, basically, the way I know, or get somebody who knows the system better than me to give me a little tutorial.
Mhm.
The other thing that happened was I was in Indiana, and those of you who know anything about Indiana, there's not a whole lot of iconic motorcycle roads in Indiana, and I believe that's an understatement. But here I am. I'm going through Indiana. The GPS tells me turn here, and then I'm going down this road, and it says make a U-turn. Well, you hear about men never wanting to stop and ask directions.
Yeah.
Well, I'm one of those. Plus, I'm one of those that never wants to make a U-turn. I'm stubborn. So I fancy myself as having this innate ability, kind of a gyroscope in my head, if you will, that if I'm off course, I can correct my course. I don't need the GPS to do it for me. So that's what I did. Here I am in Indiana. And don't you know, I found the coolest road that I never would have found if I'd have tracked the course of the GPS for me. So it was good news, bad news. Bad news was I got off course. The good news was I found the most fun road of the whole day while I'm just finding my own way by dead reckoning through this pastoral area of Indiana with hills and valleys and rivers and creeks and what have you. And so that was a blast. Now I did run into some rain, and not very much rain, Rick, actually during this whole trip. I was very fortunate, but I did run into some excessive heat. 4 days of triple digit temperatures.
Oh,
And,
boy, that would kill you.
Riding gear on and everything.
Yeah, and I ride full gear. But
But
I also learned that riding full gear doesn't necessarily make you hotter than if you're riding with
A t-shirt,
tank top and t-shirt or whatever. Particularly learned that, and this was a seminar that was given out at the International Rally. This guy was saying, well, if you use my shirt, of course he's selling this thing, right? But anyway, so you saturate with water, leave your sleeves a little bit loose and have a vent, or leave your zipper down a little bit around your neck, and the air will come up your sleeve and exit, and it's like it's evaporative cooling. It's like air conditioning.
exactly.
And it works. I tried it in those triple digit days, and it actually works. The problem is it only lasts for a couple hours, and then you got to stop and douse yourself.
drink yourself. Yeah.
You know,
Let me interrupt you real quick. I want to see if Gary's on here. I think I heard him. Gary Campesi. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Okay, there we
Gary.
go.
Audio, no picture.
Let me introduce just for a second Gary Campesi. He is local artist here for automobile art, Gary Campesi Art and Design, and we want to welcome him here. Gary, we're going to get to you and what you do and your artwork just in a second here. We're gonna, just a second. And Larry, you had more questions for Dave.
Well, yeah, to circle back, Dave, to the base camp and the mapping and the routes and stuff like that. For our listeners and our viewers, I would tell you that when I used to do the distance and do those long distance runs, I actually would have two GPSs, because one is where I'm going right now and one's where I want to be. And so, like we said, when you're trying to say to yourself, how far is, if once I get to the next place, to the other place, am I going to make it before this time? The advent of having two GPSs on the handlebars, that's a significant difference. But I can always tell you this: a paper GPS is better than anything, because there are times, when the cellular data isn't working. A lot of people are using Google Maps. I personally like a thing called WAZE, W-A-Z-E. But there are times when sometimes that doesn't work. And there may be times when there isn't a satellite coverage for whatever reason, the clouds, the trees, you're up in the mountain, I don't know. But I know this, that if you have a paper map, we call them paper GPSs, if you have one of those, you're never going to get lost. You get out of trouble. So that's kind of the cool thing.
Yeah, I never leave home on a long trip without paper maps. So yes, I'm 100% in your camp on that one, Larry.
And then the other thing is, and I think we laugh when we say motorcycling is an outdoor sport. I've rode in an awful lot of rain this year, but I can tell you that as a lifelong 60+ year motorcyclist, that if there's one thing that I hate more than anything, and that I'm more cautious and more wary of, it's high wind. When I headed to North Carolina for the BMW RA rally, I had to literally tuck 10 feet in behind a semi as the headwinds were coming straight on. They would literally almost blow you off the handlebars. And I was trying to decide from a safety standpoint, I am not going to be able to physically ride this bike in a safe manner, both mentally and physically, if this high wind continues and I don't get past a certain point. So I decided to stick it out for about an hour, and then the wind subsided and it got better where I was going. And then I was able to complete at least the first part of the journey in that. But when we're talking about preparation, there's a mental aspect, and certainly, Dave, traveling by yourself, that is a huge thing, because, when you're with a buddy and you break down, he may be able to go get gas if that's the problem. If you break down and you're by yourself and you happen to be in an area where there is no cellular service, you got a lot of thinking to do. And then you're hopeful somebody will stop, maybe, but maybe you're in an area that's desolate. There's a lot to think about, and the mental aspect is one of it. And I have to tell you, and I don't know, Dave, and you don't have to say if you did, I'm a life member of the NRA, so I'm very proficient in handling my firearms, but I have two conceal and carry, so I'm pretty good and covered. So if I'm traveling distance and I'm going to be gone for a couple of days, I probably will put my pistol in my tank bag where I can get to it, because as much as we worry about the four-legged, sometimes I'm more worried about the two-legged. And, there's an awful lot of good people out there. I've really never had a situation, but I don't want to have one, and the only thing I can do is have harsh words. So, but from a mental aspect, you have to be prepared for all of those circumstances. And from the heat, you probably saw everything from triple-digit heat to maybe up in those passes, you might be sitting in 30, 32 degree weather up in the passes.
Fortunately, just by quirk of fate, the day that, for instance, when I went through Beartooth Pass, which was the highest elevation, it was about 11,000 feet. It was in the 60s. It was like today's temperature.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it.
Gosh.
Here I have my plug-in gear, my heated gear, heated gloves, all this winter riding gear, and it stayed in my bag. Never had to come out.
The funny
but
thing.
You also mentioned, Larry, about wind, and some of the hairiest moments that I've ever had on my bike have been in high wind. So yeah, I'm with you on that. The only thing worse than wind is wind-driven rain.
Yeah.
when it's gusting and
yeah.
raining. And
Yeah.
I hit that just actually just about a couple of weeks ago. I was coming home, and I got away later than I planned, and it was after dark. It was raining in sheets, and I couldn't see oncoming traffic. I just had to hope I was still in my lane. It was incredibly scary.
Yeah.
And I would have pulled over, but I felt like pulling over was probably less unsafe than continuing on, because you get rear-ended.
Well, in closing out your trip and that, if you were to tell some younger motorcyclists some do's and don'ts, how would you sum up, and give advice on your trip?
Learn to ride before you take off on some crazy long distance journey. Get training, take the learn to ride course, take tips from people like us that have ridden and can help you out with some of the pitfalls. Make sure that your bike is top shape mechanically. Don't try to get that last 1,000 miles out of your tires. If your chain's about ready to go, just suck it up and put a new one on. Oil change, just maintenance on your bike and maintenance on yourself. I mean, don't think you can work all week long, daylight till dark 30, and then take off early on a Saturday morning and feel refreshed. I really feel like getting a good rest before I take off is paramount as well.
Great point.
I think that applies to everything, even keep the top shape, if you're driving a car or something, if it's looking like it's going to need replaced, just replace it. If they ain't broke, don't fix it. Sometime doesn't work. But, we have, Dave, I've got a couple questions for you, and I'm going to hold those off for later in the show. If you could stick around for us.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had to.
And Gary Campesi. Gary.
Greetings.
Glad you could join us. We got him by phone. Oh, and of course, Rick, why do you have a shot of Gary on your phone?
Well, so you know what he looks like. You're not going to get
really?
video.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Anyway,
I'm
Yeah,
going to
you know
shut off. I'm going to shut
Gary
off
looks
my
like.
picture. You know that, Rick? I'm going to shut mine off. Put another one up.
you have a picture of Larry too on your phone?
Yeah, I'll get one here.
So you know what he looks like, okay? I know you look like Gary. Just trying to help out a little bit today.
All right, Gary is with us, and Gary is from Gary Campesi Art and Design. And we did some segments with Street Scene with Gary and his incredible artwork. We do have some examples for you on this show, and right behind
you, that's a piece of Gary's.
Rick's fat head is a picture of Gary. That Gary made, and
I bought a few pieces off of Gary. He's a great artist.
well, Rick, take it away.
Hey Gary, what was your inspiration in artwork and everything growing up?
When I was a little kid, I loved to draw airplanes, and they were like basically stick figure airplanes. And the more I saw, these great artists work, illustrators and things like that, I said, you got to do more than stick figures. So I just kept at it for years and years and years.
Well, what, I'm going to throw some artwork up here. I know Gary, you can't see it, but we'll describe, and you'll obviously know the ones that we're showing here. But we'll put some examples up. Rick, Gary, the number 76 and 28 car that you.
Oh, that was I wanted to do a story with that one. That's the red car, right?
Yeah, it's like the multicolored.
Mm-hmm. It's like the BMW, I think it looks like.
Yep.
Is that the BMW?
Oh, okay. Okay. That's a different one. That was the first illustration of a new technique I'm developing. And it's, I don't know if you can see them too well on the screen, but there's a massive amount of horizontal lines in those pictures. And they're all at different angles. And what I use them for is to create a mood and motion. And worked on this for a long time to, develop a technique that nobody else is doing. And I finally found one, and that's, I've done several. There's a Ferrari FXX that I did. I think I sent that one to you. Several other ones. They have that very strong linear format.
And then we have, let me see. I just clicked on the one yellow. Got an X. What is it on the side, Rick?
I'm sorry, I can't hardly see it.
X179.
Yeah,
179.
Yeah.
That was I used to have a Fiat X19 sports car, and a little thing. I think it had, on a good day, it had 76 horsepower.
Yeah.
But it was the absolute best handling car that I ever had. It was like driving a giant go-kart. But
Yeah.
I wanted to do something kind of outrageous based on a Fiat X19. So I took the center section, basically the cockpit area, and used that, and then put a kind of a pointy custom front end, mid-engine V8, and some other features you can see in the picture. There's like side scoops, and a lot of people really like that one. I post on several different websites, and along with my Facebook, and people seem to really enjoy that one.
Give your Facebook out, because people listening, unfortunately, if you're watching the broadcast of this, you can actually see these, obviously. But for the people listening to the podcast, what is your Facebook so people can actually see your artwork?
Yeah, it's just look me up on there, Gary Campesi. Gary, Gary, Campesi, Campesi. And if you go to my pictures, I have albums in there, and one of them is called What I Do. I think there's 400 illustrations in there.
He's always got something different on there. I'm on his website, on his Facebook page. There's always something different from Gary.
If I'm looking if I'm looking through your artwork here that you sent, is there one that you particularly want me to pull up and explain it to the audience of how you've done that shot for at least the podcast listeners? Because Gary's work is really, really unique, and he adds a lot of different elements into it, and it's something to check out. So Gary Campesi, GaryCampesi.com. Check it out. If there's one more that you can pick out of the ones you sent me, what would it be, Gary?
There's a red car with a driver pulling a little wagon with a little kid in it.
Got it. I'm going to share this with you, and this is really kind of cool.
That one is probably a more what they would call illustrative piece. It tells a story, and what it is like some kind of futuristic Le Mans endurance racing car, but in a really different world. And the father is supposedly the driver in that, and the little kid's in his Radio Flyer wagon getting pulled along with a helmet and a steering wheel. And the sponsorship of the car on the side of it is Radio Flyer. So that's one I'm particularly fond of that. I have a real big picture of it in my family room here, which is basically my art room.
Gary, have you ever had anybody call you and say, I want to build that car?
I've been contacted by, I think it's 5 or 6 people now that want to build my cars, and some of them have actually started. One of them was actually kind of a big hit at the SEMA show, not this last year, but the year before. And it was a AMC Gremlin. You remember the car that nobody really liked?
The Grammy. If you watch any of Roadkill, one of my favorite online shows on Motor Trend, David Freiberger calls it the Grammy. He loves those things. I can't figure it out, but yeah, that's something very different.
That's the door weighed about 1,000 pounds on it.
A lot of glass.
The one that the fellow built, he was out in California around Sacramento. he built it with his father. They're good custom car builders, and they built it very, very close to what I designed. And basically, it's a Gremlin with about 1.5 feet taken out of the middle of it lengthwise, so it's a narrower car, and the wheels all sit outside like a kind of a traditional hot rod.
Yeah.
It had a V8 front-mounted engine, and he painted it this rather stunning metallic gold with and he put a denim interior in it because Gremlins used to offer. Yeah, they used to offer an interior done in denim.
Oh,
So he did it all like that.
Oh, God, please.
It was on every website under the sun. There were TV shows covering it. It really got a lot of magazines featured the car.
Hey, Gary, do they have
Yeah.
to buy that design off you, or do you say, okay, you could just use it, or how's that work?
I'm sure there's people out there kind of taking advantage of the internet, but those folks, they actually contacted me, and we had a contract, and they agreed to build it the way it was designed, and I actually got paid for that one. So everybody was a winner.
That's the way it should be.
That's a big honor going to SEMA. SEMA's big.
Good, honest folks with real integrity. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of Gary's work. I mean, you've been doing this for how long, Gary? Since you were a kid?
Well, since I was a kid, but I started doing the more finished pieces, the more, the more hot rod. I started out doing hot rods probably, maybe 12, 15 years ago. And I used to post on the Jalopy Journal. They have a page on there called The Ham, HAMB, pretty famous. And every Friday they would have what they called the Friday Art Show. And all the artists that, there are quite a few, and some very big names in there, would post a new piece that they did during the week. And I kind of got away from that because a lot of the folks that you got familiar with kind of dropped away for whatever reasons. And now it's mutated into kind of like a hobby page rather than a showcase of great artwork.
Have you ever sold any of your designs to Hot Wheels? I see you had a Hot Wheels car in there.
I'm sure. Let me fill Gary, and he can't see, but I'm for the broadcast here, I'm just going through the photos you sent me while you're talking. So
that's fun. Yeah. There's one in there. I created a Hot Wheels, but I've never submitted anything to them. As I understand it, they only deal with their in-house designers.
Oh, okay.
They don't contract with outside artists.
Figures.
At least that's well, I get it. Every time I post something that's kind of like in that vein, people are like, "Oh, you should send that to Hot Wheels." And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, where'd you go to college at?
I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh when there still was an Art Institute of Pittsburgh. They went belly up because of false promises they were making students about. Yeah, when you graduate, we'll get you a job.
Right. Yeah.
Never happened.
I don't know if they met McDonald's or wherever.
But they'll get you a job, right?
Yeah, I got my own.
Now, Gary, you paint people's vehicles for them, correct? If somebody wanted a portrait of their vehicle, you can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've done quite a few like that. I've done cars for people in Indonesia, Australia.
Indonesia? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I have quite a following in Thailand.
Yeah.
Of all places.
Hey, a lot of money there, Gary. That's all right.
Yeah, my following's somewhere around there too, right? Yeah.
Mine's up in Alaska, I think.
Probably the best one that I have done as far as like notoriety goes. You've all probably heard of the Steel Rubber Company. They make all kind of gaskety type stuff for automobiles.
Yeah.
Sure.
Corvettes.
Everything under the sun. Well, the owner's son commissioned me to do his father's antique car that he had, which was a 1930, I think it was a 30, V16 Cadillac.
Oh yeah.
V16?
Yep.
Yeah, it was huge. Maybe,
Yeah, I
maybe
was
it was a
gonna say.
V12.
Uh-huh.
Man,
Well, they
maybe
they
it was
made
a
both, didn't
V12, but I
they
know it
made
had
both
way
of them,
more than
yeah.
8 cylinders.
Uh-huh.
This quick
But,
story on that. I had to. My grandfather, when he was young, he owned a. Ran a garage, and I always remember my dad saying back then they'd pull those V16s out, and he had them laying all over the floor in his garage. Back in the 30s.
They're monsters. They're
Yeah, he said they
monsters.
were the
Yeah.
biggest things he's ever seen. Is his
Uh-huh.
big V16s out of there. But anyway,
Wow,
sorry.
that could be like a bank account now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they were just blocks laying there.
Yeah.
That's
Jeez.
true.
Hey, Gary, not
Wow.
only do you draw cars and everything, you do have cars, and you've had some pretty nice ones also. What do you got now?
Yeah, I've had a lot of cars. When I graduated high school, I bought a 1931 Ford, which never really actually got on the road. I've had Opel GTs, 2 of those, both candy apple, tangerine orange.
Yeah.
I had an Opel Manta, a Porsche 911S, a De Tomaso Pantera.
You had a Pantera. Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah, yellow
I just
one.
saw
Beautiful thing.
one of those the show a couple weeks ago. Pretty nice.
I
have a
have a
Ford
really
small
unique.
block.
I have a unique story about that Pantera. I bought it and I held on to it for a while, and I decided to sell it. A fellow who was an engineer for Westinghouse Corporation called me. He said, "I'd like to come look at your car." So eventually he decided he would buy it. We agreed on a price. He took it. I didn't see him for a couple years after that, and I got the hankering for have that car back. So I called him one day and I said, "David," I said, "You ever think about selling that Pantera?" I said, "I'd be interested in having it back." And he said, he said, "You know what? I wish I would have known that a while ago." He says, "I actually sold it." And he told me his interesting story. He said he was asking at the time, I think it was $9,000 for it. Now you can't touch one for less than $100.
A junk one, yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, he asked 9,000, and a kid came over to his house, knocked on a door, and before he said anything, he says, "I won't pay any more than $10,000 for it."
okay. Cash
David
only.
Jordan was a hard bargain, but okay.
Yeah.
So he sold it to him for $10,000, and the kid asked him. He said, "Can I borrow your license plate just to get it home?" He said, "I don't live that far." He said, "Sure." So he got in the car, took off, and about an hour later, maybe a little more, came back with the license plate. And he said, "Oh, thanks for bringing it back so soon." He goes, "Well," he said, "I wrecked the car on the way home."
Oh,
jeez.
he
that's tough.
He tumbled it end over end like 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Fast was going. Oh my
So
God.
here's your license plate. Thanks.
Hey, Gary, what was the deal with those? Why did they make those? That was a Ford production, right? Or it had a Ford engine in
Ford?
it anyway.
Small block. Ford.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that was a real international effort.
Okay.
The company De Tomaso,
Okay.
they
designed it.
they were owned by an Argentine named Alessandro De Tomaso.
Okay.
He set up a small factory in Italy, and he worked with Ghia, the body designers. The body stamp.
Oh, yeah. They're big, huge, yeah.
I remember Carmen Ghia.
Yeah.
Ghia was the company that made the body.
Ghia did a lot of designing, yeah. They did some for Chrysler, a lot of companies, yeah.
Ford decided that they wanted to kind of have a Ford GT for the road, and they couldn't get that actual Ford GT40 on the road at that time. It was strictly a racing car. So they contracted with a fellow named Tom Tajarda. He was a industrial designer, automotive designer. He designed them up a prototype that looked basically exactly like what went into production. Ford supplied the engines. They shipped them over to Italy. that put them into the Pantera. Then it'd send it over to Gia for the finish work, and then they'd ship them to the United States. All for under $10,000 in this country then.
Mm-hmm. Was that an all glass
believe
body?
No. It was a steel body car.
Oh, it was a steel body car? Okay.
Yeah. Do you ever ride in a prop-driven airplane?
Yeah.
You know how they feel when they're going across the runway with that engine? You know?
Uh-huh.
That's the closest to a prop-driven airplane I was ever in without actually flying.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I took it up to close to 150 one time.
Oh, wow. How much that thing weigh?
Yeah.
About 2,500 pounds, 2,800 pounds or what? Doesn't look like a
I
very
think
heavy car.
I think they were around 3,400, 3,500.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was I don't like little tiny cars, and I don't like massive cars, but I like sports cars that are a little bit on the larger side, and that's what that was. It was about Corvette size, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I'll tell you what, that thing was really, really something to drive in.
Mm-hmm. So you just finished something else you were working on, right?
Yeah, I kind of, you know, you get one of these deja vu kind of things every now and then. I had a dream about getting a Mercedes, which I had owned a Mercedes before, a 190E 2.316 with the Cosworth engine in it.
Okay.
And that was a gold car.
With the Cosworth engine. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, Cosworth cylinder head and exhaust and induction system. But really a fast car. They used them in the German touring car championships with Michael Schumacher drove those, and you know, a lot of famous racing drivers, Ayrton Senna. But I dreamt about getting this red convertible, and I'm like, so I'm going to start looking around for a red Mercedes convertible. And the new ones are just outrageously priced.
Oh gosh, I'll tell you, yes they are.
If you can even find them.
The more I dug into it on these Mercedes sites and stuff, they were all saying, if you want a real classic Mercedes, buy one before 1999. Because in 99, Mercedes shifted from an engineering dictated car to a accountant driven car. And that's when things started getting cheapened on them. I mean, they're certainly not cheap cars, but they're not what they used to be.
No, break one. You'll see they're not cheap at all.
I looked all over for a 1998 SL500 convertible with a removable hardtop, and I wanted one in good condition. So I looked Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, New York, and looked and looked and looked, and I guess, oh, this one's too far away. This one's too much money. This one's not in good condition. So I went on Craigslist of all places and put it in, and boom, one popped right up, and I said, boy, does that look nice. The guy lived 3 miles away from me.
Oh, perfect.
I went over, I saw it, took it for a ride. I said, I want it. So it needed a little bit of like restoration work, in as much as like the paint needed buffed, the headliner on the removable roof was sagging. There was some plastic pieces that needed replaced. I hated the wheels that were on it, so I bought a set of wheels, Mercedes wheels, and brand new Yokohama tires from a place out in California, and they shipped them to me. Refinished those wheels, put them on, did all the plastic stuff. I scrubbed the interior to where it looks like you can't tell it from a new car now.
Yeah.
But
wow,
it is such a nice car. And I told my wife, I said, we're going for ice cream some night with the top down. So she got in it, and I had the top down, and she gets headaches from the wind. And I said, you know, you can wear a hat or something if you want. She goes, no, it's not that much wind in here. I said, that's good. So we're driving along, and she's really quiet. And I goes, I think she doesn't like my car. She goes, I said, what's the matter? She goes, this car is so relaxing. It's like therapy.
Yeah, yeah. Getting a convertible is like therapy.
Oh, I
or
love
riding a
the
motorcycle.
convertibles. Yeah,
is-
love the
So I made a
convertibles.
license plate on a old Ohio plate out there. Instead of having the license number, I put the word therapy.
Yeah. I'm gonna interrupt you. I want to get back to. We got probably about 10 minutes left. I've got a question boggling my mind. Is when I used to live out in Arizona, we take trips up to Mount Graham down by Thatcher and Tucson. When I drive my car up there, the elevation was killer. For running. Larry or Dave, I was wondering, with your travels all over the place, do you have problems on your bikes with the elevation, affecting of how it's running, if it's a carbureted car or a carbureted bike?
Mine fuel injected and I have zero problems with it.
That's what I was wondering. The carbureted bikes, I'm sure, you've gotten up into elevation where you're up 7,000 feet at some point.
Mine ran as well at 11,000 feet crossing the Beartooth Pass as it does at sea level.
Okay, it does
Mhm.
adjust itself. Larry, have you ran into that problem? Just out of curiosity, it just hit me all of a sudden.
Oh, sure. And I'm glad you brought that up because that was one thing I was going to talk to Dave about and explain to the viewers. But yeah, if especially with the old like BMW is on an R75/5, and I'd carry an extra set of jets because you're when you go up in that altitude, that's thinner air. You better change or you could have a problem. You're definitely going to have a power loss, and you can kind of adjust for that by changing the jets and that. And if you really get fancy and you know anything about your slides, you can change them out. But that really was too much for as much time as you're going to spend there. But you definitely, it's easy to change the jets on those horizontal cylinder engines.
Yeah, because what I was always experiencing, when I was out in Arizona quite a bit, I traveled down near pretty much sea level, and I'd go up Mount Graham or up towards Lakeside and Pine Top, Arizona, up in the mountains there. And boy, my car would in that weather, it would you'd get up there, man. You'd be putting your foot down, and it starts overheating on you because it's not. You can't get any power out of it.
No.
But yeah, I just it was like, well, the motorcycles probably have the same problem if they're carbureted. Now, fuel injection,
the air fuel ratio goes out of whack. So,
but Dave, one of your greatest adventures that you've ever taken, what is it? I stumped him, and I knew I would.
Well, I've had so many now.
Yeah,
so,
he's had so many.
Well, are you looking for the most harried adventure I had, or just
what's the one maybe most enjoyable? One that you kind of one that you look back on now and say, I scheduled this trip and it came out way better than I ever dreamed it would.
I think riding up the coast highway, the Pacific Coast Highway, from north of San Francisco all the way up to the Washington state line.
Oh, I bet that was just a
beautiful through the Avenue of the Giants and some of the rugged coastline and just the smell and the of the pine forest and just in the sea air. That was euphoric.
I bet. Yeah. Well, again, you didn't plan that. You planned the trip, but you didn't plan the other senses to take in of the smell and even the sights. You can't. You put a camera out there or a GoPro or something on your bike that you can't. It doesn't do it justice.
Yeah. You can look at a map all you want to, on video, whatever. But until you're there and actually get those sights and smells and the air changes, the temperature changes, the variance. I just happened upon this a couple of weeks ago, going over to West Virginia. Been over there many times. This was another MSTA ride. And I just decided I'm going to take a different route, just to change it up a little bit. So I discovered a road. I probably rode for about 15 miles without seeing the sun. There's a tree canopy the whole way.
Wow.
Creek
Jeez.
running alongside the road,
Uh-huh.
and the temperature dropped about 7 degrees. And it's like, please don't let this end. I just want this to go on
Yeah.
forever.
That's when you wanted to do your U-turn you didn't like to do. Yeah. You just want to go back through the trees.
Mhm.
Yeah. Gary, we got a few minutes left. Again, I want to throw a curveball to you a little bit too. The car you regret getting rid of that you've owned, the biggest regret.
Oh, it's definitely that Pantera.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, that one was like that gnawed at me for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you had a couple Opals too.
Yeah, those sweet little cars.
Opel GTs.
40 miles per gallon during the gas crisis. I was like the king of the hill.
That was what, a German-built car, right? The Opel.
Yeah, General
Yeah.
Motors division over there, Opel.
Okay.
In
Mhm.
fact, half of the Buicks you see on the road manufactured now are Opels.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Those,
Oh, really?
yeah,
I
those
didn't know
little,
that. Wow.
yeah, those little hatchbacks they bring in are rebadged Opels, and
Those tracks.
that station wagon that they make now is a rebadged Opel.
Oh boy.
That Tour X, it's called. What a beautiful
Tour X.
car.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I tell you what, I got a motorcycle story. It won't take long.
Go ahead.
It's why I quit riding a motorcycle.
Oh no.
My wife and I used to go out all the time in the summer when it cool off on it, just helmets, the whole thing. Well, we got caught in a construction zone between Washington, Pennsylvania, and our home on Interstate 70. And it was 4 lanes reduced down to 2 opposing lanes. And I got behind an 18-wheeler, and I was like 15, 20 feet back, maybe, something like that. Everybody's just going along merrily at 45, 50 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, out from underneath this tractor trailer in front of me comes an automobile radiator.
Oh,
Oh.
jeez.
You're lucky you didn't
It
get
fell off
killed
of
on that.
it fell off of a truck, and we hit it dead on.
Oh, man.
And I'll tell you what, the bike did not swerve. It was just like going over a little bump. It was like boom, boom, up and down.
You're lucky
my
you didn't
wife
lost
said-
the bike over that.
My wife says to me, "What was that?" I guess that was us getting a second chance at life.
Yeah, really. Really.
How true.
Yeah,
If we'd
really.
have gone down, we'd have been pummeled by about 50 cars behind us.
Yeah. Now I'm
Why
going to
is-
say that
Yep.
that had to have been quite a few years ago, because with the quality control now of cars, and you don't have a lot of the junkers riding around anymore. You don't see a lot of that anymore.
It was my idea that it was like a truck hauling junk or something, and it
Oh,
might have fallen off. It.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you said that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, you know what?
it happened so fast. It happened so fast. I didn't have time to get scared. It was just like hit it and go.
A good.
It's one of those things you just kind of tap yourself. I'm okay. It's,
Yeah.
I did that. I
After
did that
that,
once. Go ahead.
No, I sold it after that. I said, that's enough. I said, it's not you, it's the other people on the road on a motorcycle.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We got a couple minutes here. Rick, you have any last questions for Dave or Gary?
Hey, Gary, how can we get in touch with you if you wanted to do some artwork for somebody, or if they wanted to see your artwork?
You can message me on Facebook, Gary Campesi, or send me an email at GaryDesigns4You@AOL.com or GaryDesigns4You@gmail.com.
And
They can
that's
commission. Good.
That's Gary Designs 4 and the number 4 you. Gary Designs 4 you at gmail.com.
And you is just the letter U. Yeah.
And
They can-
Yep.
They can commission you to do work, draw something
Oh,
for them and all
sure.
that. Sure. Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
or they can, some people really like some of the things I have in my portfolio of work now, and they'll say, well, and I'll say, I can get them made just about any size you want. Give me a size that you want to fit it into your situation, and I'll give you a price for it. So.
Okay, I picked up a piece of 3 pieces from you. In fact, I gave a couple pieces away for Christmas presents a couple of years ago. So they really liked them. My girlfriend's kids, they're car guys. I gave them those, and they go, "Wow!" The one's a designer too, and he loved it. He said, "Boy, this is really good." I said,
Yeah,
I got 'em.
very nice. Very nice.
"Yeah, yeah."
Yep, Larry, you got, we're gonna wrap it up here. Any last minute comments, questions, insults, or anything like that, for
I want to thank Dave for not forgetting about me and keeping in touch in that. And I also want to say that my next guest in 2 weeks will be retired Bridgestone tire engineer. He headed up all the global Bridgestone car and racing and motorcycle racing efforts for Bridgestone tires globally, not just in the United States. TJ Tennant. And of course, he has a Ferrari, and every time he goes out of town, I send him a text and say, "Can I borrow it?" And I get a no.
You break- if you
Just a
break it,
no,
like,
or is it
yeah.
Something no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a something no, but I
No,
want to thank
no.
Dave.
No.
I want to thank Dave Mangun for stopping by, visiting with us. I'm glad that the trip was all that he wanted it to be, and that he has arrived back safely. So I look forward to seeing you down the road, Dave.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. And for, we want to thank Dave Mangun, Gary Campesi, for
Now,
Rick Guerrera.
We got Diz Dean maybe on the show next week.
Diz Dean,
Next
he is
Dean,
local.
yeah.
Diz Dean's a local guy, and he does, he's a car guy, motorcycle
He's a
guy,
car guy.
He's a
and
pitcher.
a model guy.
He's got hundreds of models he's built. So he's another
Oh,
artist in his
okay.
own way.
And we
Yeah.
got another interesting episode next time for Gary, for Gary, for Rick Guerrera, Larry Ward. My name is Greg Rosen, and we will
We'll see you down
down
the
the
road.
road.